and welcome to the first episode of the Overthinking Christian podcast. It's me, your host, the Overthinking Christian, and today we're going to be talking about what this podcast is, who I am, and we're going to be talking about what thinking is. What does it mean to think? Before we get into that, this podcast is going to be 20 to 30 minute segments, and every day we will have a specific topic. Like today will be about what thinking exactly is, and it could be related to philosophy, Christianity, life, things that I'm going through, things that maybe you're going through, whatever the case. But this podcast is not just going to be about Christianity. We will be thinking about things together, thinking about fundamental life things. I love I love philosophy. I love thinking about things. I love overthinking about things. I love to be a free thinker, and I love to hear all perspectives of things. This is actually why the next episode, I believe, I don't want to put any promises, but I believe is going to be about a hotly contested subject in the church, whether or not it is a sin to curse or cuss, something that many Christians on both sides of that issue feel very passionate about, and something that I've thought a lot about. I've heard all the arguments from both sides, and I think I have a very nuanced opinion and a very deep understanding of both sides of the argument. So, before we begin, who am I? I sort of grew up in the church. As I mentioned in the trailer, I think my grandmother led me to Christ at a very young age, and we would go to church almost every Sunday with her. And I would say this about my faith: I grew up within Christianity, but I am not the product of Christianity. What that means is I have looked at all angles. I've looked at a lot of I know a lot about religions in general, and I'm a free thinking person. I don't take things at face value, and I do not just believe what I believe just because I was raised that way. I want to make that very clear. I'm a free thinker. I love to think. And one of the problems that I had growing up was if I believe, or at least from my perspective, if I did not have a relationship with God, a true relationship with God, I would not be a Christian today. There is no way. If He had not spoken to me when I needed it, if He had not been there with me at my worst, at my darkest moments, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be a Christian today. I wouldn't be where I am today. There's no doubt in my mind. To anybody else who would have gone through the things I've seen within the church, and trust me, there are a lot of problems in the church. I do not deny that because I've seen it firsthand. But there's no reason to believe that there isn't a God. There's no reason to believe that there could not be a God. It's a very straw man argument on the part of atheists to point out all the flaws of the church and say, well, look at that, the church is flawed, so therefore there must be no God. That argument is a straw man argument, not one that I like. And I think that a lot of those kind of arguments come from, I would say, anti-theists, people who are angry at God. And I don't think that is consistent with a true atheist. True atheists are not angry at God. They're not angry at Christianity. They see the goods of religion. They see the good inherent things about religion. They say there's good things about religion. They bring people together. They bring people together, and they have rules and principles that bring people into a life where they can grow and be better. And there's nothing wrong with that. Has religion done a lot of terrible things? Absolutely, without a doubt. Do is look at the Spanish Inquisition that the Catholics did, right? I mean, there's been all kinds of horrible things religion has done in the name of God, but that in no way invalidates the fact that there could, in fact, be a God. And so, I grew up in the church, but a lot of the things I grew up with were ideas and things that were very, very wrong, very bad things I've seen within the church. I've seen cult-like behavior from the church. I have seen horrible brainwashing done by the church in order to deceive people. And if this had happened to anybody else, there's a lot of people that if this had happened to, they would not be a Christian. I've seen people walk away from the church for lesser things than I've seen and I have been affected by. Cult-like behavior, brainwashers within the church who brainwash people into believing that they're supposed to bow down to these pastors, bow down to these leaders in the church, and they have to take everything that they say as word of truth because God anointed them. And so they're never wrong. This thinking is, of course, very wrong and very I would say it's a very, very goes against the Bible. The Bible, we don't take the Bible at face value. Never take what a pastor says at face value. Go home, read your Bible, delve into the Word, and make your own opinion. I go to church right now, and there are things that the pastor believes that I don't believe, and I think there are things, and we might talk about this next week when it comes to cursing within Christianity. Things I find inconsistent about his way of thinking. We've talked about those things, but there's no reason why I left the church. There's no reason. I didn't leave that church. I am a part of that church. I still go to that church. I love that church, and it has been my church for years now. There's no reason to leave that place because that's where God sent me, I believe. And so I say all of this because I don't want anybody to think that, I'm only a Christian because I grew up within Christianity, because that's far from the truth. I had a conversation, matter of fact, on Facebook with somebody recently, and the conversation went terribly wrong. It was a left-wing person who was very emotional, very, very angry, and I asked for clarification 5 times, and they would not give it to me. This conversation went I didn't even understand what we were talking about. But I defended my Christianity. I defended Christianity from the attacks of these people. And she called me brainwashed. And that couldn't be farther from the truth because I've been through that. I have been brainwashed by people within the church. Matter of fact, by family members. That grandmother I told you about, she is a brainwasher. She is a person who brainwashes people into believing what she believes. If you don't believe exactly what she believes, you're a horrible person. There is only black and white with her. There is no gray areas. There is no nuance. There is no. She reads the Bible. She takes it at face value, and she interprets it that way, which is fine. But then to tell somebody that because they think differently they're horrible is horrible. Now, I grew up in this kind of environment where you weren't allowed to question things. You didn't question things. You took things at face value. There's this doctrine within Christianity that says, you read the Bible, it's a love letter for you. You read it, you take it at face value, you put it onto yourself, and there you go, you're good. And that's just, there's so much more that goes into reading Scripture than just that. There's so much cultural, historical context, along with the context of the Word itself. I went to a church for years where the pastor took the Bible and he would just take out verses and say, well, this is what this means. Out of context, completely out of context, completely out of historical context, completely out of the context of... You see, when you read a verse, you have to take into consideration the context of the chapter, the context of the book, along with the context of the chapter, along with the context of the paragraph. I mean, everything. You have to put it into context of what the whole thing is talking about. He would take things out of context, and he would always talk about authority, how he had authority. And he was brainwashing people. It was becoming like a cult, where you could not question him on anything. I did, and, well, that conversation went badly, and he blocked me on Facebook. Yes, I got blocked by a pastor on Facebook. It's one of my favorite stories. So I have seen the terribleness of the church, and yet I am still a Christian today. And I will remain a Christian, I hope, for the rest of my life. I don't plan on backing down from that. I don't, because in my personal world, I have seen God. You say, well, what do you mean you've seen God? I've heard God's voice, man. I've heard God say things at the right time. I've seen God's hand of protection on my life. I've seen things that cannot wholly be explained by just coincidence. I've seen God physically heal me. I have seen things that every time. Now I've gotten to this place where I realize every time I begin to doubt, I begin to really think about if God's real. I begin to doubt that God is who he says he is. I begin to doubt what the word says about him. I turn around and the next thing I know, God shows me something that proves to me that he's real. Every single time I begin to doubt, that's what happens. I've noticed that throughout my life. There have been times where I've doubted, I've thought, and I've doubted him, and he's came through a week, a month later. As I'm thinking and I'm doubting, bam, he comes through and he says, I'm here. I was listening. Do you doubt anymore? And I got this place where I'm like, I don't know if I can doubt anymore. Like, I don't know if I can. So, I am not a person that takes my faith lightly. I'm not a person who takes people thinking that I'm brainwashed lightly. And one of my co-workers, one of the first conversations we ever had was about religion. I believe he's a Buddhist, and he told me a lot about like his religion. We were talking about religion, and he told me, "You're the smartest Christian I have ever met." And I realized in that moment that a lot of Christians aren't thinking about their faith. They're not critiquing their faith. They're not actively thinking about it. They're not doubting. And if you don't doubt, you're never going to find the answer. I mean, it's great to live your life knowing, in the full knowing that God is real. But at some point you have to ask yourself, do I know that God's real? Or am I too ignorant to ask? Am I too afraid to ask the questions? Am I too afraid to find the answers? Because asking the questions is scary, but we all have to do it. Anyways, I wanted to put that out there, that to make sure that we know that I am not a person who has been brainwashed by my faith. I have come out of brainwashing. I have come out of a system that was designed for my destruction. And I have come out on the other side knowing that I can no longer doubt. Because I've seen the hand of God. I've seen he's done so much. I have gotten the opportunity to go places and do things for the ministry of God that I wouldn't have been able to do. I shouldn't be able to do. But I did. So, that's a little bit about me. And, some more of that might come out in the podcast as we talk about things. But many of you might be wondering, well, what happened? Right? I put out a trailer for this. I was all excited to get ready, and my life crashed. It was right after I uploaded the trailer for this. Things went downhill pretty quickly in my life. Relationship stuff, I live in a basement right now. It flooded. It's flooded about 5 times, and we finally got it fixed. I crashed my car. Currently looking for a new car. Just everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong, and 2020 came along, and it's gotten better. And here I am now, recording this, which is fantastic, because I didn't think this was going to happen. But it's just a crazy moment thing that I decided to do this, and here we are. So The topic for today was just a little mini topic to get us started is, what does it mean to think? Well, that is a question that is so fundamental to not only this podcast, but to life. What does it mean to think? Many of you probably, there's a lot of people who don't even think about what that means to think. I was writing a blog post about the mind, the soul, and all this stuff. The mind, the heart, and the soul. And I looked up like what the mind is. I found like all kinds of different viewpoints. There's the scientific viewpoint. There's the secular view, or there's a scientific viewpoint. There's a religious viewpoint, and there's philosophical standpoint. There's all these different standpoints. There's all these different viewpoints about what exactly thinking or the mind is. You know, the brain is obviously it's a muscle. It's a thing up here. They have those synapses. You know, the electrical currents running through your brain, telling you what to think. But where do those thoughts come from? They're connected, and they're connected in the way that we speak, and we're able to speak, and we're able to bring thoughts into our mouths and speak them into existence. Where does that come from? Right? And so thinking is on one level. I read an interesting Psychology Today article about this. One of the interesting things that was in this article was the idea that you kind of have an unconscious thinking, right? You're breathing, you're walking, you're moving, and then you kind of have the actual activity of thinking, like when you're really thinking about something, when you're studying something, and so you have this kind of unconscious, kind of thinking that goes on, or where you're just kind of mindlessly going through your day. You see this I see this at least in the store a lot. The store, you see people kind of moseying around. I sometimes think older people, especially, like Walmart could be doing a remodel in the store, and it would take them 30 minutes before they realize that the store is doing a remodel because they can't find the thing they were looking for. Because they're just so used to just doing the regular thing that your brain does a very good job of being efficient. If you do the same thing over and over again, say. One example I heard in a TED Talk I heard recently was, you put Post-it notes up, inspirational Post-it notes. What this dude found was the problem was, you put these Post-it notes and you put one up every day, say, but then your brain begins to like put them into the background, so you're not really looking at them, you're not really thinking about them anymore because they're there, right? Your brain is efficient in that way, right? And so when people go to the store, they're not really thinking. They're just doing their own thing because it's just a regular thing that they're doing. And you see this a lot when you go to the store. You see people just kind of moseying around, not really thinking, not really actively thinking. And I often think, man, it's just the world that we live in. I mean, you go down the interstate, there's billboards, there's all these things that grab our attention. We have 50,000 things within Walmart that we can pick up and buy. I mean, it's right at our fingertips. And they was doing a thing at Walmart one time when they had to have, they didn't have to have, but they did. They had a police siren light on this table to get people's attention, because otherwise it would not get their attention. Because we're like children. We're like, we have to have big lights, big lights, big neon signs, big things in order to get our attention, because we're not going to get it any other way. Our brain is just going to go right by it. Many people in life are not actively thinking enough, I think. And there's one thing that I want out of this podcast is to get people to think. To think critically about life, about philosophy, about their faith, about what they believe. But it is the most important thing that we do. It's unequivocally the greatest thing that humans do is to think, because when you think, because what you think impacts what you do. One of my core beliefs is this. It's a logical steps, 3 logical steps. What you think is what you believe, and what you believe is what you do. Right? So say you want to get inspired. Say you want to feel better about yourself, right? Say you want to become more positive about yourself. You want to stop being so negative. One of the ways you can do that is to start thinking. You have to start, I should say one of the ways, you have to start thinking better about yourself. You have to start thinking, because what's going to happen is, even if you don't believe what you're saying about yourself, eventually you're going to believe what you say about yourself. And then when you begin to actually believe, see, a lot of people think that what you believe is just what you think. But I argue it's not. Unequivocally, it's not. See, a lot of Christians believe in, say, helping the poor or feeding the homeless or believe in charity, but they never give. So I would argue they don't believe in charity because they don't do charity. If they honestly believe charity, they would be doing charity, but they don't. They think that charity is a good thing, but they don't believe. They don't believe in charity. Same way with God. Same way with the way that we interact with God. Many people think that God is real, but they don't believe God is real, because if they did, their life would reflect that God was real. And see, this is one of the things I was thinking about the other night. If people would believe how good God is, and the things in the Bible that talk about how good God is, and how good He really is, and how He loves you unconditionally no matter what, that, if we honestly believe that, we would no longer have the chains. We would no longer be bound by the chains that we are bound under. Because we would believe it to such a degree that we would begin to live it. Because once we unequivocally believe that God is as good as He says He is, then we would live that way. That means you would walk with a different attitude. You would live with a different attitude. God, well, maybe it wasn't God, but I thought about this the other day when I was listening to some worship music, and I thought about this. He said God interjected into my mind, and I could say that it was just me. I thought about it, but whatever the case, this is what I believe. What you think becomes what you believe, and what you believe is what you do. So for Christians, if you want to be unbound from the chains that hold you back, I believe the first thing you need to do is begin to understand how good God is, how much He loves you, how much He cares about you, how much, no matter what you do, He will never forsake you or leave you. And you begin to think those things so that you begin to believe those things, so that you begin to live that way, because you need to actually believe it. You don't need to just think it, but you need to take the next step and begin to believe it. You need to think it so much that then you believe it so that you're living it. And once you begin to live like God is that good, you're going to begin to, then you need to begin to think, but what does the Bible say about me? What does the Bible say about myself? How I am, who God says I am. And once you begin to think about who you are, who God says you are, you will begin to believe who God says you are, and you will begin to live who God says you are. And that is the key to freedom from the chains that bind you. I believe this with all of my heart. And I'm not just speaking to you, I'm speaking this to me, because lately I have been failing in so many areas of my life. In things that have been going on, and the things that have been holding me back. Procrastination, things happen in life, but it doesn't give you an excuse to stop doing what God calls you to do. And when we humans procrastinate so much in our lives, we don't want to do the work. We don't want to do what God has told us to. Because Satan comes in and does something, and we say, oh, well, after this is done, after everything calms down. And then I have found that after everything calms down, especially in this last season, I have found that when everything calms down, you are left in a different state of being than you were before, and you've got to pick yourself up, and you've got to say, it's time. That's what I'm doing right now. It's time. And like Jordan Peterson, if you don't know who Jordan Peterson is, he's a wonderful philosophical professor from Canada. He talks about it. If you want to change the world, if you want to reorganize your psyche, if you want to begin to change your world, change the world, be better, you begin by cleaning your room. And that's what I'm about to do. So I will be back, hopefully, in a week or two to do another episode. Next week, we'll be talking about cursing, what the Bible says, what people think, both sides of the argument, and what I think, and how that will impact the rest of this podcast. I hope you all have a blessed day and a blessed week, and I'll see you back here real soon. Peace.